Okay. Yep, we are live. Okay, guys, just editing my stream info here, and we are pretty much ready to go. Do a little quick share. To the Facebook page here. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I've got emails here and I'm letting myself be distracted. Let's not do that. Okay, so we're going to work a little bit in Adobe Illustrator today and convert some of that artwork we created for my buddy Silverback and make it into vector artwork. So vector artwork means that basically it's all the information, instead of being pixels like you might be used to seeing, when you zoom in, you see all the little squares and it's all blurry. Vector, you can zoom in indefinitely. There's absolutely no blurring or anything that happens, no matter how big you make it. If you make it really small, depending on your display, you might get some. I'm just going to test the chat function really quick here on my, yeah, we're live here. Okay, so I've got the chat running through my phone, so I can keep an eye on that. I've got it up on the screen as well, but it's kind of out of my view here. But definitely, if you're watching live, feel free, if you have any questions, fire them at me. But let's go ahead and get started here. So again, to keep up, if you enjoy the stream, definitely go to 5012 Design at Facebook, facebook.com/5012design, or you can just go to my website there, 5012design.com, and there's a link to my Facebook there. The website itself, kind of outdated, but there's some stuff there if you want to see it. Let's get into Illustrator. I've already created a document for us here, and because we're planning to eventually print this artwork, I've gone ahead and created this document in CMYK color mode. Basically, that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Those are the colors that you would use on a standard ink printer. So anything you do in print, you want to do in those colors. Anything you do digital is going to be in RGB or red, green, blue color spectrum. So it does make a difference when you get to printing. So some of the colors are not going to look quite as vibrant on the screen here. If we get into colors, I don't think we're really going to mess with colors too much today. But some colors might look less vibrant on the screen, but they're going to print more vibrant on whatever medium it's printed on. And then vice versa, if we work on RGB, sometimes those colors are not going to transition properly to the printer, and you can get some really weird colors happening, and the vibrancy might be off and stuff like that. So we definitely want to keep that standard whenever we're working on a document, especially with vectors. Usually we're planning to print it, so we should keep it in CMYK, and it's always easy enough to convert CMYK to RGB and make some tweaks if we need to. But I usually, when I'm working on vectors, I'm working in print, and if I'm working in print, I'm working on vectors. So I always default to CMYK. Now I have placed here the first gorilla that we drew. We came up with this face, and I really enjoyed this face, and I thought it would make a really cool, let's see if I can overput preview. Let's make that look a little nicer maybe. Okay, so actually that's going to be a little confusing. We don't need that. Let's turn that off. So I'm working here on a 10-inch I'm going to hit Control R to bring up our ruler, a 10 by 10 canvas. And of course, with vectors we can resize, but 10 by 10 seems to cover, t-shirts and printing on paper and all that stuff. So generally, if I'm working on a logo or graphic, I'll start in 10 by 10, and then of course with those vectors you can resize as necessary. Now, right now we're working with a raster image. So I just pulled that drawing that we did a while ago here straight into Illustrator, and as we zoom in on it, there you can see all this pixelation that's happening here. We don't want that. We want to be able to blow this up as big as we want without the pixels. We want to clear out some of these extra little gaps where the pen didn't fill all the way, and sharpen up these lines so that we can blow this up as big as we want and still have it look really good. Now, there might be there's a chance we might be able to do this with some automated tools in Illustrator, or we might need to do it manually, or a little of both. So I'm going to try the automated tool and just see how it looks to begin with. So first I'm going to just copy this image, and then I'm going to place it right on top of itself. You know what, actually let's not do that. Let's move it over so we can actually see we've got two images here. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one just as it is. I'm going to come over to this one, zoom in a little bit. We can kind of see the pixelation there, and you'll see here how this changes in just a moment. So let's get both of these and let's just align them. See them both on screen. Okay. So the one on the left, we're going to try tracing with the automated tool. So you can just click Image Trace. Whenever you have an image selected, you have that option in your toolbar. I'm going to actually try a couple of different settings and just see if I can find one that works really well as a starting point. So click that. Oh, that looks terrible. Absolutely terrible. I had a feeling that was going to do that. Now that's kind of a funny thing. Line art. Now this is line art that we're working with, but this conversion is very strange. So same with that one. It's trying to identify strokes and then make those into vectors, but it's not using any shapes or fills or anything like that. Now I think sketched art does pretty well. There we go. Okay, so now we can see we've got very similar images here. And if we zoom in, we can zoom in as far as we please, and it will never blur. And that actually worked really well. Kind of surprised there. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to expand this image, this vector. There we go. I'm going to now ungroup it, because basically what we're looking at here, you can't tell, is there's a white square with a sort of a black fill. Not sure actually if I've got it set to black or gray, but black looks kind of gray in that CMYK scheme. But there's a white square that you can't see because I have a white background, and then white fill in all of these little areas like the eyes and on the nose. And let's see, there's probably a few others in there. Now what I want to do is get rid of the white square especially, and then just work with the artwork itself. So I'm going to ungroup this. So what we did is we first expanded that vector image that it created, and then everything's all in a group, so it's all one object. We want to break it up so that all of the individual parts are separate. So I'm just going to ungroup, and you can do that with Control-Shift-G for ungroup, or you can select it from your menu, or if you're working on Mac, Command-Shift-G. So we've ungrouped it there, and now we can see, let's see, Oh, you know what? Maybe because that artwork was open, it didn't. Or maybe it was the choice I did. Yeah, there's no square there. So that's cool. So here is part of the face, and let's zoom in. Yeah, you know what? It doesn't look like we've got any white gaps. Let's test that. I'm going to grab a square here, just create that. I'm going to change the fill on it. I'm going to put it over here, blow it up with the whole image, and then I'm going to drop it to the background. So you can do that through the object menu under arrange, bring to front, bring forward, send backward, send to back. I use send to back and send to front all the time. So there we go, we've got the white from this image, but no white in the vectors. That's great. That saves me some cleanup time. Okay, I'm going to take this image, move it over here, and let's see if we can adjust this. Let's see. Well, first of all, I want the opacity to be down like 25%. And then I want to try to get it pretty well lined up. Yeah, actually that's pretty good. Send that to back. Send this to back. Okay, now if we zoom in, let's back out a little bit. Let's take this, the artwork itself, I'm going to lock that so that we don't accidentally select it. So lock selection, Control 2, Command 2. We'll do the same thing with this red layer. I'm going to keep that red layer in there just so I can see a little better. And now we can see some of the details that we lost when we made that conversion automatically. So little line in here, here by the ears, little furrows in the brow, things like that. We might want to clean those up a little bit or recreate them. And so I'm going to do that with what's called the pen tool. And the pen tool is kind of a goofy name for it because you don't draw lines with it necessarily. You create shapes with it. But we'll go ahead and grab that. So the pen tool, you can just press P to select that as a sort of default. And let's adjust our fill to black. And we're just going to start recreating some of these little shapes here. So this would be kind of the old school way of creating a vector image, as you would trace over the image that you have. Instead of converting it. But Adobe's gotten much better at those conversions. And I'm just trying to kind of recreate the brush stroke with these shapes, or the look of a brush stroke anyway. Now up here in the ear, I've extended that line, and I'm going to combine these shapes. First thing first though, I need my tool here, anchor tool, it's Shift C, that's right. I hit V for this tool is the same. There's this tool also exists in Photoshop. That was wonderful English there. This is a Photoshop tool, the pen tool, and a Illustrator tool, but they work very differently depending on which program you're in. And they have different shortcuts, which is really not cool. But some people, some people use one and some people use the other. So they want to make it kind of work for everyone. That'll work. Okay, so right now I'm using a tool here called, I think, Direct Selection Tool, which is the A key. Oops. It allows you to move a specific point. On a line, but it does not allow. It allows you to adjust these Bezier handles, but it doesn't allow you to adjust them or create them. You have to have them already existing. So to make them exist, you actually need to use the pen tool, or what is this tool called? The anchor point tool, which we were using earlier. And so the way this works, again, we're seeing in vectors, we have lines and we have points, and then we have math that determines what is the angle and curve of the line between 2 points, and a color code is assigned to that shape, and either as on the line or as a fill or both. It's all math. It's just saved as math. It's not saved as pixels, and that's what allows us to expand it. Now what I want to do is combine these shapes, and I'm just going to create them as an additive combo. There we go. And these curves I think I'm kind of okay with. Let's come back here and change this shape just a little bit. Now the only real difficulty with the trace tool is that it really likes to round out everything. It doesn't like to have sharp points. It tends to avoid those if it can. And sometimes when we're drawing artwork, especially in this style, we want those sharp points. So it's kind of what we're working on here. Okay, let me switch tools here. And yeah, that's fine actually. So this is how I generally work on vector artwork. Is I like to create it first in my sketchbook app. Get handles on here so I can get that curve. Curve can come in. You know what, that one we can get rid of. I just hit minus to grab the, they call this one delete anchor point tool. Sorry, I should probably be using these menus so that you can kind of see better what I'm doing. You know what, actually I want to add that anchor point back. There we go. And whoops, Shift V, not V. No, Shift C, sorry. There we go. So there's a couple of ways that we can work here. In order to get this sharp point, I just created it. and combine the shapes. For this one, I've been sort of just working with what's here. And, you know, you've got to kind of figure out what works best for you as you go. So if you look at my website, 5012design.com, you can actually see there where I have created an entire image just through tracing. So before I learned about these tools, or at least before they were very good tools, I actually used to, oops, that's the tool I want. I used to just trace it manually. That's how I was taught, and doing that gives you a whole lot of control over your artwork, but it takes a very long time. I actually drew that Respect the Beard character on my Samsung Note 4, and then I just traced it all out. And it did take a long time. Okay, we don't need 2 points there. Let's just get rid of that. And I cleared that up pretty well. Okay. Now what do we got going on over here? Let's just get rid of that one. And I think I'm happy with that. Okay, now in order to make these shapes here that I created look a little bit more like brush strokes, I don't want them to be perfectly angular like they were when I created them. So I'm just going to add just a tiny bit of curve into them so they look more like a pen stroke, a brush stroke. Just zoom out, kind of see what that ended up looking like. Okay, that looks more like the original artwork, a little less blobby. We're going to need to clean up some of that too. This part here, I think I want to change that as well. And I'm going to show you a little bit different method that I like to use sometimes. I'm going to cut that in sharp. So right now I am creating a shape sort of inside. Let's intersect that. Over top of this shape. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to actually just cut this out. I think it will be easier to get the look that I want by just cutting these out. So select both shapes, and now this shape that I created is on top. Whatever you create is always on the top layer, and then as you continue to create shapes, they layer up on top of each other more and more. So as long as it's on the top, it should just cut right out when I use this minus front tool here. So cut that out. And this is the Pathfinder tool, which I've connected to my little side menu here. By default, I don't think Adobe puts that on the menu. So if you're having trouble finding that as you're following along at home, go up to your window menu and you can find it there, Pathfinder, and then you can just drag it over because it'll come up floating like this libraries window, which I actually really don't need here right now, but I'll just drag it in there, and whoops, that's not where I wanted it. I want it in, let's see which button, do I have to use a different button? There we go. Drag it right into that side menu. And then these, you just hit the little arrow and they pop in and out so that you can use them or not. Okay, let's go back to Direct Select Tool. Let's see what we got to work with here. Let's add a point there. Just that line just a tad. And basically at this point I am sort of reinterpreting my artwork to fit exactly how I want it to fit. And it just gives me such fine control over these lines and how thick these lines are. If you go back to that first, actually I'm not sure if that one was the one that we saved or not. I lost one of my videos. But basically line thickness helps you define depth, and at least I like to use it to help define depth. So I really like to be able to fine-tune that. And you know, actually I think what I'm going to do here is get rid of this lower blob entirely. There we go. So we just have a nice little stroke there. Let's grab our pen tool. And I'm just going to create a new stroke here. And actually, I really don't need that line in there at all. Okay, and if you double click when you're in this little anchor point tool, you can double click on a handle and it'll just delete that handle. And what's probably kind of hard to see here is I am switching back and forth between the direct select tool and that anchor point tool. So hitting A and Shift C to recreate those, and that there was just a simple copy paste. And I want to transform this. I'm going to go to the regular select tool, hold Shift and Alt or Option for you Mac guys, and just kind of adjust that line a little bit to recreate that little brush stroke there. Okay, so this spot here that we've been working on is where the beard basically starts to come in. And oops, wrong button again. Keep hitting C. Come on. Shift C. There we go. I didn't actually hit it right, I guess. This is where the beard starts to grow out from the chin here, or the jawline, as it meets the ear. And these two shapes can be combined. Let's see, whoops, there's my combine tool. Whenever I have intersecting shapes, I do like to try to kind of combine them there. Okay, just like before, we've got some shapes here that used to be rounded out just a tad. Okay, so now we have some very, very specific brush strokes going on there. And I feel like we need that up here. I don't like the way that this turned out. So actually what I'm going to do, let's grab that remove tool. Let's just start cutting off these points. Another way you can do this here is you can use the direct select tool, and you can just grab all those points and hit delete and then fill in the line. You don't have to do it the way I just did it. Okay, so let's recreate this stroke. There we go. And we need to add a point in here. Move its Bezier. Put up there. Let's increase the length of that Bezier. Let's increase the sharpness here. And recreate this again. Okay, that's an unnecessary point. Now, if you grab one of these handles with the direct select tool, it's going to move both handles. If you grab it with the anchor point tool, you can move singular handles. And now I'm going to go back to the pen, and I'm going to just start recreating some of these strokes. And for the most part, most strokes are essentially a triangle. So when you have a really blurry shape like this, because the resolution is so low, that's a kind of decent way to sort of figure that out. Go, and then let's just add a little curve. So grab the line. That's another thing you can do, is if you grab the line, you can automatically create those Beziers as you drag the line around. It's kind of cool. In fact, I'm going to do that for these strokes. The nice thing about that is it just creates very even strokes in there. So there we go. I like those much better. That's much better detail. This is not good. Let's see. The way that this intersects here, I don't like that at all. I'm going to grab, whoops, need to make sure I grab just the point. I'm going to drag that up here. And let's grab this tool here. Just try to kind of fill that in. Okay. And I'm going to combine these because they overlap. There we go. So depending on how detailed you want the final artwork to be, You can put more or less time into this. Also, starting with a higher resolution image is going to give you a much better transition because it won't have so many blurry spots it doesn't know what to do with when you convert it. So if I had created this image much larger when I originally drew it, or much higher resolution, this would be better. That's the one thing I don't really care for in Sketchbook, is that it defaults to the screen resolution that you're working on, but really you want your artwork to be 3 times as big as that at least. And if you're going to convert to vector, you probably want it even larger than that. And working with such a large raster document in Sketchbook can get a little bit choppy. You really need a lot of processing power for that, so you kind of have to balance that out, and you might just have to, when you convert to Illustrator, just make some of these adjustments. But definitely it's much easier to draw by hand and then go in and edit than it is to create from scratch. Okay. So in here we've got a couple of shapes that are pretty much no good. I don't like the way that they blobbed out. They've got these weird cuts on them. I'm going to just recreate those. And I think actually I can recreate, I'm going to recreate them by reusing some of what I have already. I want to actually flip that. Did I do that right? No, let's just go into object. I think I need to actually reflect it. Okay. There we go. So that stroke that we made over there, very similar to the one that I wanted here. Again, reflect that. Now I really would like a quick option for reflecting, the shortcut or something, keyboard shortcut. That would be handy. I also feel like the little turn handle could come up a little bit quicker. Let's reflect that again. Now when you reflect, there are a bunch of little options for what direction and all of that. I'm just not really messing with all that. Okay, I like that much better. Down here, let's do it a little differently. Let's just set that there, grab this point, pull it up here, subtract that point, change that angle just a bit, bring this curve much further down, and I think we've kind of recreated that stroke as it should be there. Bring it over, shrink it down, adjust the angle a little bit, and whoops, moved it way too far. What you're seeing there when it jumps, I'm hitting the arrow key. Sometimes you can just use the arrow key to move things around, and I like that, it's easier. Okay, let's round that out. It moves it by a set, sort of a set distance though, and sometimes that might not be the distance you want. And I like to just zoom way out, zoom back in to kind of see if I feel like those shapes are going the direction they should. because this is very unnatural. Moving things like this, creating these shapes for strokes, pen strokes, very unnatural in my opinion. But if you zoom out and look at them, you can really kind of figure that out. I think these need to be recreated. Let's do that. Tool. And when you're, creating artwork like this, just leaving these sharp is really a kind of a cool effect. But because I have a lot of smooth curves from when I originally drew the artwork, and I'm probably going to keep a lot of that, I'm not just recreating it by hand, the whole thing. I want to actually go in and curve these, but I actually personally really like that sharp effect. It's kind of cool. There we go. That's a little bit more like I'm looking for. So as you can see, this is pretty tedious work. If you really want it to look good, pretty tedious. Sometimes you can, if you have a really good starter image, maybe a little less tedious, but generally, yeah, it's a lot of work. So when you're paying your graphic designer to create vector artwork, if you're not watching this because you create artwork yourself, you can kind of see how much work really goes into all of this. Man, I'm almost actually kind of wondering if I would rather just recreate all of this. I initially thought I was going to show you how to trace all of this because it was so low res. And then it came out fairly well, but I don't know. I don't have the time really to go in and do all that. Okay, so here I'm using the actual delete function. So you can kind of see what that looks like to delete either the lines or the points. Switching back to the pen, just connect those points. Now it's all one shape. Kind of see how that works there. Okay, well, I guess now the question becomes, how interesting is this to watch? Probably not. very interesting, I'm guessing. So maybe what I'll do is oops, get that curve. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just finish this all off the stream from this point out, but at least you've had a chance to kind of see how this works. Give you a little insight into the process here. I don't know. Do we have? Oops, that's probably not what I wanted. Do we have anyone actually watching out there? Is anyone in the chat? What do you think? Are you enjoying this, or would you rather we just kind of move on? I guess if you're out there, you're probably enjoying it. But I think if I'm reading the screen right, we have one viewer, and that's me, because I always watch my own stream just to make sure everything's working. So, yeah, I think maybe that's what we're going to do. We're going to just cut this out probably about here, and then I'll just work on this on my own, and you'll get to see the finished product on the Facebook page. But I don't want to just bore everyone to death and make a ridiculously long video for no reason. You can kind of see how we're working, and I was going to originally do both images, the face here and the final logo gorilla, but it's going to take too long. So we'll get this one done first since we've got it started, and then we'll import the other one, do that. You know, actually, let's pull that one in. We'll at least do that part of it. Let's pull that in. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to lock it down. Actually, no, I won't do that. I'm going to keep that unlocked. So with Illustrator, if you're used to Photoshop at all or Sketchbook, you have layers, right? Where you can build your artwork up on multiple layers, basically clear layers, and you just draw over top of, and you can change blending type and all that stuff. In Illustrator, we have that doubled. So right now we are working in layers. Each of these little objects exists in a layer. You can't really view that layer. Well, actually, can you? I guess you can if you expand. Yeah, there we go. So here's all the layers of artwork and shapes that are in this document. Typically, you're not going to look at those. So what we would do instead is create a new layer. And one thing that you can see differently between the layers is they each have an assigned color, and that's the outline that you see when you select something, so you can easily tell which layer you're working on. You can lock an entire layer, so now I can't select any of that. And you can turn off an entire layer. So it's almost like you've got multiple Photoshop documents in one artboard. So artboard is the overall white space here that we're working in. You can have multiple artboards as well, and then you can have layers with sublayers, almost like individual documents themselves. So I'm going to come up to a new layer here. Let's zoom way out, and actually I'm going to create another one as well, and I'm going to just show you a couple things. So on this red layer, let's place an image. We'll grab our gorilla guy here. Now you can, when you choose to place an image, you're going to get this little cursor here. If you just click the cursor on the document, it's going to put it in at its natural size. That's what I always do. If you want, you can size it specifically to a size you want, but I don't want any additional pixelation within the application that's not necessary if I can avoid it. So I'm just going to click it. There it goes, puts it in there. This is on the red layer, and I'm going to go ahead and image trace it just like the last one. We'll do the sketched art option. And it looks like we got the gorilla himself pretty well. In fact, there's not a whole lot of adjustment we're going to need to make to that artwork. But the gun is horrible. And I kind of knew that. It was drawn really lightly, came through really horrible. I might redo that import and just go darken that gun. I could definitely do that before I imported it. But this was drawn very simple with the intention of pulling it into Illustrator like this and getting these smooth shapes. And so it was all built out of smooth shapes, and that's what the trace tool really likes. So kind of see how that worked out there. So that's with a, I'm going to turn off the background there, that's with a sketch that was drawn at a high resolution with this in mind, this application in mind. I'm going to lock him down, turn that off. I'm going to name these different layers so I keep track of them, because I'm just going to work on everything in this one document, I think. Okay, so level 3 here, layer 3. Let's go ahead and place again. I just want to show you how this trace tool kind of works. Let's grab this guy. So this is one of the reference images that we were using that I found on Google. I don't know who took this photo, I apologize. But you can create an image from that. If I do this sketched art option, that's kind of a cool effect. So you can trace out a photo. Here we do a high fidelity photo. It's going to take a little bit of time. There we've converted that image. Now you can see it looks kind of blotchy. It looks like it was painted like an oil painting or something. But this is now all vectors, and it can be resized indefinitely if we wanted to. So kind of a cool tool to have. And you can just play around with some of these different options. If we do a low fidelity photo, we get much more splotchy result there. Depending on what you're working on, sometimes converting a photo to vectors is a really great shortcut to creating that image. It's really depends on your project and what you're planning on. If we just do 3 colors, let's see, this would be really simple. Sort of a posterized effect there. That's pretty cool. Black and white logo. Get just the one. It's pretty much just like the other sketched artwork. 16 colors. What do we get out of that? There we go. That looks like an old school 8-bit video game or something like that. Cool effect. So you can play around with those, and then you can fine tune them once you've got it converted. Here's black and white. Of course, with a photo like this with so much detail, that's a lot to go in and change. But if we go ahead and zoom in here, you can see it never pixelates. It's sort of already pixelated because it's made out of all these blobs, but it never pixelates as you zoom in and out. You can work with it like that. Let's see, silhouettes. Yeah, that doesn't work well on that image. Let's try that line art. It'll look terrible. Yeah, that is the worst trace. I don't know when you would use that necessarily. Kind of goofy. But let's show you this. Let's just do the default. Default, it just picks one, whatever it feels like it would be best. I never use that. I always click on the menu and choose an option so I know what I'm working with. And I'm just going to go into that high fidelity photo here. There it goes, and let's expand it. There you go. Now you can actually see all of that vector data that's in there. It's all layered up. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy to see. So, and we can even ungroup it and just remove parts of it. So you can create some cool effects this way. We just remove everything from the edges there. That actually looks really cool, I think. I really like that. What if we grab everything from the very bottom edge? Just give it a really torn paper type of look to it. Yeah, look at that. That's cool. Very cool. Let's come in here. Just remove the big gap there. Now, if I wasn't using a square select tool, I could probably get some cool effects there. Yeah. So something like this, copyright-wise, I'm not super clear on, but I kind of feel like this is stealing. I wouldn't use this unless I made significant modification to it. And even then, I don't like the idea of using someone's photo to create artwork like that unless you have their permission or you've licensed it from them, something like that. So something to keep in mind as you're playing around with these things. If you're actually going to create this sort of image effect for a client, or for t-shirts you're going to sell or anything you're going to possibly make money on, you either license the photo or use your own photo to get that. So it would be fun to go to the zoo and take some pictures of animals, see if I can get some good photos and convert them like this. Just to have my own, basically. But that's always best. It's always good to just create your own rather than, you definitely don't want to just pull something off of Google. So let's do this one again. This effect on a little different image. I'm just curious how this is going to turn out. Expand it. Ungroup it. Pull out a bunch of that background. Yeah, so working like this really allows you to have a lot of control over that background, pull things out. Obviously some of this would need some tweaking. But how cool is that effect? I think I would want to pull out some more here. Oops, that was a little too much. We've got a little bit of this derriere there. So if I was going to use this for artwork, I would probably much more carefully select what I'm removing. But how cool is this overall? Let's pull this up. Let's shrink it down just a little bit. So to shrink it, I'm using the Shift key, holding Shift while I grab that anchor and scale it so that it all scales evenly. or typically I'll actually hit, hit Shift and Alt, or Shift and Option for Mac guys. That'll actually shrink it in based on the center of the image. So you might have seen that a little bit as I was working. But yeah, how cool is this image here? So, you want some animal artwork like that, go to the zoo, take some photos, vectorize them. You can do a bunch of cool stuff with them that way. Really, really cool. I really like this sort of effect. I definitely need to get back out to the zoo and kind of try that out. Let's see if we grab this selector tool, just come in, see if I can kind of clean this up just a tad. Look at that. Let's grab some of that. So this in here is sort of unnecessary for the way we've got this artwork built. So that would make an awesome t-shirt print for a zoo or something like that, or maybe a client that's working in wildlife preservation, saving gorillas, whatever. You can create some really great artwork like this, and then this can be expanded to fit a t-shirt, to fit a mural on a wall, a billboard, whatever. Really cool. And you can go in and make adjustments too. If you wanted to go in, like here we have no eyes, I could draw in eyes if I wanted to. Try to personalize it just a little bit more. Oh, there's a tool I didn't know about. If you hold Alt and hit your mouse wheel, you can zoom in real quick. Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers what I want to talk about as far as vectors and getting this logo done. And from this point out, we're just talking about a whole lot of busy work in fine-tuning all the little vector artworks here that we've been working on. So I think actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over and do this one first, just because it's going to be a little easier. It's mostly done already. And then I'll probably have to do a lot more manual stuff with the gun itself. But yeah, but I'm going to do that off camera so I can listen to some music and pass the time a little bit better. And I'm probably going to have to pick that up a little bit later. I think pretty close to needing a break here. So I've been going for a little while. What are we at? We're at about an hour here. So I really need to kind of balance that out, manage that time so that I can come back and do more of this later in the week, or film another video out in the shop, something like that. So I really want to kind of keep things balanced. I'm doing pretty good. I did have an infusion recently, last week, and throughout the week it's kind of, the weather here has been kind of weird, and I've got that old man arthritis, so that really affects me quite a bit when the weather gets really dynamic here in Colorado Springs. And so I've had some good days, I've had some not great days, some recovery time. If you're on Facebook, you saw my post there about just using last week as sort of a recovery time, and finish up some little side projects that I had going on. Did a brochure for the National Mill Dog Rescue, finished that all up, so that was really good. Did a quick advertisement image for social media for my buddy Kevin Dixie, who does Aiming for the Truth and No Other Choice Firearms training. He's going to be doing an event. I had already worked on one sort of online flyer, Instagram flyer for him for the Aiming for the Truth event, and he's going to be doing some pistol training as well. So we went ahead and created a little advertisement he can use for that. Using some effects very similar to what we were just working with here. in Illustrator, but in Photoshop, because that was never going to be blown up. We could do it in Photoshop and make it that way, and use some kind of better tools. Doing it in vectors is a little bit more limited, so we did that last week, but I didn't do any of it on camera here. I did film a video about bone broth. I did plan to post that. It got interrupted by a massive hailstorm. That was kind of interesting. And we went through the whole process of how to create bone broth the way that we do, which is really good for you, very healthy food to consume. I pretty much have bone broth either as a soup or you can drink it too, but I generally like to make a soup out of it almost every day. And that's really really good for me for supporting my immune system and for supporting inflammation resistance, I guess. It helps with inflammation to reduce that a little bit, and just really healthy for you. So good fats in there. And anyway, I'm not a nutritionist. But I feel better consuming that pretty regularly. So we made a video about that, but we never actually got to the point of straining it out. And I would like to show that. So probably I'll finish that video the next time we make bone broth, and we'll show the straining process and jarring process. I like to store it in jars. It's easy for basically a single serving, ready to go, and you put it in the refrigerator. It keeps for a while, and and it solidifies generally in the refrigerator when it gets cold. And something about that process I feel like makes it taste better. I don't know why that is, but I would much rather have it out of the refrigerator than straight out of the Instant Pot when it's been just made. So anyway, so we didn't have any videos last week, but I really want to hit this week hard and have some good videos for y'all. So this one will be going over to YouTube shortly here, and then I guess, leave me some comments on Facebook or on the YouTube video. Let me know if you want to see more of this process, or if you, well, you can just let me know if you want to see it. If you want to see it and you want to watch all that busy work of fine-tuning those vectors, I would be happy to do that. But because it's going to take a while, and because of the way copyright issues and stuff with YouTube, I don't want to play any music while I'm streaming. But what I could do is mute the microphone, shut down the sound or whatever, and just work. If you want to just watch it, turn on your own music, zone out, watch me work on it, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to do that all by myself and kind of get it done, and I'll show you the finished product. So yeah, that's pretty much going to cover it. Just pull that down here, show the logo. So 5012 Design, Uncle Mike 5012 is my handle on Twitch here, as well as on Instagram. If you want to check that out for more of just what's going on in my personal life, you can do that. 5012design.com is the website. I do need to update that. It's pretty out of date, but it does have links to my social media stuff that might be pertinent. The Facebook page is probably the best place to follow me, and on YouTube. So definitely head over to facebook.com/5012design. Any of my YouTube links there, click on that and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Right now I don't have a good YouTube handle or address. It's a really long, obnoxious address because I don't have 100 subscribers yet, so I can't create that. So it really, really helps me out if you go over and click on that, and you can subscribe, hit the little bell notification if you want to see in YouTube whenever those posts, but you can also follow on the Facebook page to see when there's posts there as well, whichever you like, or do both, whatever works better for you. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day, And I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. So I got to pull up my OBS software. We can look into Infinity for a moment, and we'll go ahead and close the stream. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.